Hey everybody, welcome to the Tom's School of Life weekly update. I'm Kevin Dolan. I'm joined here by Barbara Williams, David Moore, and Jeremy Evans. Here to talk about what's going on in the group. And this week we want to address creating an ecosystem. Tom has talked at various times about building a parallel economy, building economic connections between like-minded people so that we don't have to rely on people that hate us and that we're not crazy about. So I wanted to get ideas from the crew about what you've seen work at the School of Life so far, how it's going as far as progressing toward building those kinds of parallel relationships, what you've seen work, what doesn't work, and also on the micro level, how an individual can create kind of a productive ecosystem for themselves. Because it's definitely my experience when I was working the W-2, you're just not thinking about like the value of your connections and how they could make you money and how they could make each other money potentially, and how you could be a valuable connective tissue between them. It's there's an atrophy that comes when the money is just sort of given to you in exchange for services rendered twice a month. So let's start with you, David. What have you seen work in terms of creating that kind of richness and that kind of organic connection?
Yeah, I think in terms of developing a parallel ecosystem, the way that I find that that's most easiest deployed by the individual is with each decision. So each time that it comes up, you kind of cast your vote with your dollar. And we do that within the group. We say, is there anybody in the School of Life that you can use first? And then is there anybody who's sort of on side that you can use, right? And that's not always possible, but to the extent that you can have that be kind of part of your rapid decision tree, when you're thinking about a vendor to select or a collaborator, to try to use someone that is you know from this group. And if you don't always know someone, to either tap your facilitator or to maybe linger a minute or two longer in that decision, just to ensure that you haven't exhausted the resources that are available in the School of Life. And with respect to developing an individual ecosystem, I think this can be one of the most fun things to do within the school, right? It's you get to take these introductions that we make on the calls, that we recommend you to talk to somebody for which there's maybe a low likelihood that it might lead to something, but you're kind of developing this internal spreadsheet or database of people that you know. And so when I tell people I come from a sales background, so for me, I'm very happy to take a low likelihood of success introductory meeting, right? Just who knows what could come of this, but developing that belief in the principle of emergence, that you just can sit in the room with someone and something can come out of a conversation, to the extent that you can kind of place faith in that process and develop just a trust in, hey, I'm just going to hop on the phone with somebody, see where it goes, but if nothing else, this is someone I'll have down the road, and build it before I need it. I think is the phrase that you kind of want to keep in mind. And certainly we do that naturally, given the kind of the personality types that inhabit facilitator roles. But to the extent that you can take an eyedropper of that into your own way of being in the School of Life, I think proves valuable.
Yeah, there's an ecosystem of people, and there's also, I think, an ecosystem of opportunities. So like what I do, I mean, I have this group, I have my group, I have some writing that I do and some social media presence, and all of those things nourish each other. And I think maybe the folks in our orbit, the folks in this group who maybe share our temperament and are already sort of instinctive networkers, they also tend to be people who get bored really quickly and have a tendency to not finish what they start. And having an ecosystem of opportunities where you can switch gears and work on something else, I think is really powerful. Barbara, I'd like to hear from you about what you've seen.
Well, I would like to say that us as facilitators, we do keep track of some of the experts in the group that we're aware of. And so if anybody wants to be considered an expert in something or wants to be called on to contribute to other people, we have a list of people. So if somebody asks, hey, I really need a graphic designer, for example, we have people in the school that we can, present to that person and make those connections as well. So you don't have to know all of the people, obviously, to get
Yeah,
that started.
it's definitely at a scale already where it doesn't make sense to just rely on the facilitators' top of mind memory. We do keep pretty good records on who's got what expertise. So there's a lot of control F, a lot of
Yeah.
finding
I'll,
going on.
I'll add to that. If you've told us once what you do, kind of remember the 7 times rule. Tell us 7 more times what it is that you do and what you have to offer. And occasionally we'll hear someone say, well, I've already posted that in the directory, or I've already shared in the chat what I do and what I offer. And I would just say, tell us again and again and again, so that we can continue to find you that you stay top of mind when it comes to resourcing for projects.
Yeah, it's a pro shill space. We are
Yes.
definitely all about shilling. Let us know what you're doing, push it. And it's very rare that somebody would even people are so uncomfortable around marketing. And you could almost always err on the side of marketing it a little more than you're comfortable with. Because your project is always bigger in your mind, and your footprint is always bigger in your mind than it is in other people's. I routinely, I mean, it's my business to hawk this kind of thing all day long, just flog it. And I routinely have people who honestly like know me quite well, friends online who are like, "Oh, you're the exit guy? I didn't know you were the exit guy." And I'm like, got the big flag back, so whatever. But but like, yeah, you almost never are as visible as you think. So yeah. Jeremy, I'd be interested in your thoughts.
Well, I just put around the directory. We have 100 businesses on there, which is very good. And because the directory is my child, like many other things on the site, I'm proud that it's growing up into its teenage years. At the same time, there's obviously more businesses amongst us. So there's no excuse not to be on there. And if you're hiring or you're looking for services, it's a little bit overkill. The search is a little bit overkill. I'm not, hopefully this doesn't apply to children, right? But we'll see as my son grows up. When I look at it, I always see problems more than the opportunities that exist. You can simply keyword search anything that you want. People don't realize this. If you want graphic design, you don't have to scroll through the 100. You type in graphic design. That's it. So I think that's core functionality that is in fact beautiful and working exactly as it should. And there's no reason not to utilize that a little bit more. Regarding the pro shilling, I've removed shill from my vocabulary. It is a popular internet term, but the reality is we are literally the safest space for business on the web. Where are you going to go that you can be more capitalist and more self-promotional than Tom Wood's School of Life? The answer is absolutely nowhere. Tom encourages you to promote yourself. Tom promotes himself. That is a beautiful thing. There are a lot of, if you've ever tried guerrilla marketing to Facebook groups, maybe none of us have, but me, you get banned immediately. There are a lot of rules throughout the entire internet that say, hey, you may not promote yourself. We are the exact opposite. Please, please, please promote yourself and cultivate that sense of community and the ability to circulate money amongst each other. This is an aside, but I did write it down. Every time David tells advice to anybody, David's already getting nervous. I pick up on the subtle little bit of psychology. He always embeds secret sales advice. He gives you the best, highest quality sales advice, but he'll never announce it. He'll never tell you that it's actually sales. He says things like, well, you have to be ready to walk away. You have to realize that this isn't the make or break transaction of your life. You have to be, hey, I'm not sure if we should work together, but there's a lot of push pull. There's a lot of very clever introductions. David is the guy to go to for how to make a cold introduction. And I think he packages in a way that's actually very, very accessible to people who aren't comfortable or familiar with sales situations, mainly because he's not going to tell you that it's a sales situation. He's just going to tell you the exact thing to do. And then, I think that's wonderful.
David's my go-to. If somebody tells me they hate salespeople, David's my go-to.
Right.
I'm like, how you don't hate David, you big liar.
Oh, yeah.
Talk to David for 5 minutes and try to hate him.
Yeah, exactly.
Something else. We'll call it something else.
Right. Yeah. And my only apprehension there is people don't realize that they're learning like the best of canonical tricks of sales that David has accumulated over a decade plus.
You know
I don't think I realized it. I've become a better salesperson just by being around David. That's a great thing to know.
You know what I think it is? I think it's like plastic surgery. You think plastic surgery is bad because the plastic surgery you notice is bad? Because that's why you noticed it. I think people bad sales reps look like sales reps. And guys like David just effortlessly tie together incentives and harmonize people and get people on the same page. And that's
right.
Ultimately the task of sales. So all of which is to say, in addition to just let David know that we love him, but to say that he's a great resource for, if you want to know how to market something, if you want to know how to connect with the right people in an organic way, a natural way, hit David up. He'll give you some thoughts.
Yeah, and with respect to marketing, I mean, Jeremy, that phrase, the safest space for business on the web. I mean, you are the one-to-many marketer, and I think that is the category that many folks in the School of Life are here to master, right? That maybe they're more familiar with the one-to-one, that type of sales that I do, or that I gravitate toward. But you
maybe
you are the one-to-many guy. And so I'm gonna send you a compliment right back that in terms of in the mind of the marketer, every time I talk to you, I'm always hearing mass marketing angles that are just so good. And that's what fills seats. And that's how we all found each other here, right? To be in these spaces where it takes mass marketing to bring people in the room so we can have the more intimate conversations. Yeah.
I mean, it is I got into marketing from web design. I taught myself programming. I started doing server admin, web design, blah, 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 blah. Years and years ago, now over a decade. Marketing is the bottleneck for most businesses. Marketing / sales. Sales has more of a role in B2B, of course. But yeah, I mean, it is a perennial problem. I think that as libertarians, we have no excuse to be gun shy about marketing or sales. The reality is you're trying to improve the world. Sales and marketing are the most direct way to enhance your life and the life of the people that you're engaging with, the lives perhaps of the people that you're engaging with. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. That mindset shift is probably the number one hang up that new entrepreneurs that I encounter generally face. I want to say, I got two things very briefly. The Rolodex mapping, 100% first advice I give to anyone who wants to do consulting. When you're in the latter years of your career, if your brain is made like everybody else's brain, you say, I should be making 3 times more money for 1/3 of the time. That's consulting. And you need to write down everyone you've ever met into an Excel sheet right away. And you need to know what they do, how you can connect them, how you can be valuable. And that network that comes from decades of experience in an industry is extremely valuable. It's extremely valuable, cannot be underestimated. If you're younger, start doing that now. Consulting is not something that's done with cold marketing and sales. It can be. It's expensive. It's stupid. It's a waste of time. If you've been in the industry for 30 years, please write down all of your connections. I feel like you got something there, David, about consulting.
It's funny because I presented briefly on this topic at the Exit meetup last Friday, and one of the things that I mentioned was from a book, Never Eat Alone, which is Keith Ferrazzi's book. It was a bit of a business card book for himself and his consulting, but he did have that put your network into a spreadsheet, and you really need to visualize your network. It's so important that you could say, well, the people just come to me when I'm in conversation, and that's true. You should make some connections when you see it visually. And again, I think there's, the complaint about that book is that so much of what's in it is obvious, right? And I love to state the obvious. Stating the obvious is one of my favorite things to do. I state the obvious often and frequently, and to everyone I know, because the refined study of the obvious is really kind of what I think success is. And I think that's such an important thing that I'm just going to echo it. Yeah.
Going-
Self-help, Jordan Peterson. These are millionaires from the obvious.
Yeah. There's a thread I'd like to connect about sort of altruism and doing good for other people here, that like, if I was talking to a guy in the group about this executive he knew, who was a classic networker, classic like water cooler, being at the water cooler instead of working kind of person. And he was like, yeah, this guy is just all talk, and he's just always about promoting himself and all about like, and I was like, well, and this guy's a millionaire. And I was like, there are shiesty ways to use that skill set, but there are also really good ways to use that skill set. And if you've got a way to make other people's lives better, then I think, you can change your outlook on selling what you do. It's more about like, you're raising awareness. I mean, like the type of stuff that David sold in his sales career was stuff that people needed and would make their lives better, and they were going to have to get it. And he was about creating the awareness of like, this product is what you need, and we're the people to give it to you. But they needed it. Like, it wasn't, he was providing them a service by making them aware of it. And so you can really change your attitude toward sales as a service that you provide, of creating awareness. And you have to believe in what you're doing. If you're in a job where you are, I mean, a lot of what we're here to do, right, at the School of Life, is to help people who are in professional situations that they don't believe in. And so maybe the first step is figure out what you do believe in, what really animates you, what's the value that you could really provide if your livelihood was taken care of. I like to ask people, what would you do if you had $500 million? Because that's a really thought-provoking question. Because it takes about 2 minutes for people to exhaust. Well, I'd travel the world, and I'd buy a big house, and I'd spend every day on the beach drinking mojitos, and then it's like, okay, that'll take you like 3 years, I think, max, to just enjoy everything there is to enjoy about having that kind of money. And then you'll still have like $498 million, or what I'm saying, like some outrageous amount of money. And then it's like, well, what are you going to do with yourself? And then you get into this like, wow, like why am I a conscious being in the universe? What is the meaning of life? And once you attack that question, most of the things that you would do are things that make money. Like, for me, basically, I remember reading, this is from the 4 Hour Workweek, by the way, I'm cribbing this shamelessly, this exercise. And I remember doing that when I still had my day job. And what I came around to basically was I would be helping people who are shut out of the mainstream, helping people who are useful to me, building a tribe, not necessarily like compound life, but like getting our families together and learning how to farm and all kinds of things. And it's almost exactly what I do at Exit. It's like, it's you could almost go down the list. And it means that basically I found a job that I have to tell myself I have to tear myself away from, because I really love it. And And it turns out people want to pay for that. People want to pay for that service. So, you know, not everybody can do exactly what I've done, but there are definitely people in this group, in my group, who have found the thing that that they would do if they. I got a guy who makes videos. He makes documentaries about people he views as heroic, and his purpose is basically to I'm going to take the hero and I'm going to set him up on a pedestal, and I'm going to show you the hero in the most glorious, beautiful light. And that's how he makes his living. And if you asked him, what would you do if you had $500 million? That's what he would do. And so there's almost no way to fail if you are doing that.
If I may, along the lines of altruism, I'm not a huge fan of Ayn Rand. I think one of her key insights, nonetheless, is that altruism is inherently selfish. I am a student of biology. My major was in neuroscience. In evolutionary biology, altruism is considered self-sacrificing behavior that benefits the group. The relationship of a species' willingness to commit an altruistic act, such as an ant that will drown itself to create a bridge for its sisters, brothers. I'm not really sure how ants work with gender. We'll have to figure that out. Is related to the coefficient of relation, the amount of DNA that they share. Fundamentally, what we can gain from Rand is that behind your altruistic acts lies selfish in the Randian sense, motivations. The lack of that self-knowledge is dangerous. If you are helping people to aggrandize yourself like a standard narcissist, and you are not aware of that at any level, right? I'm guilty of this as well, by the way. I am constantly, I desperately want to help people. I want to give people a leg up. I want to give them opportunities. I do this at my own expense, routinely. Now it's predominantly in the group, et cetera, et cetera. I volunteer my time excessively. Even when you do this, you have to be aware that, right, I want to be seen as a good person. I want to, I'm going to develop this kind of relationship where I have just a small amount of power and things like this. Whatever it is, you have to be aware of those motivations and hopefully clamp some of them down if you don't view them as wholesome, beautiful motivations that are good causes for helping people. Business takes this completely out of the equation. You don't necessarily need the self-knowledge because fundamentally things are measured in dollars in business. And you know that dollars are going back and forth between the two of you, between your clients and yourself. You know that you are helping people and you can put a price tag on that. You can objectify it in a way that removes a huge portion of the element where people simply project their psychological needs onto the world through disguised acts of charity. To me, that is beautiful. That is wholesome. That is perhaps even better than standard stuff. I'm not going to talk about Mother Teresa. I know nothing about Mother Teresa, but I think of her as the quintessential altruistic individual. I don't know all of her motivations and things like this. I think perhaps her reward was in heaven. I don't think that we as rational individuals can act in such a way that we don't have some self-interest.
Even if you are casting your investment horizon beyond the grave. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And those are considered higher self-interests. I want to be the guy that creates a company. Atlas Talked is what I'm thinking of. It's a fundamentally idealistic company I created during the pandemic, a downturn in business, blah, 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 where people say that I can be helpful to other people for their personal problems, that I can look at another individual and I could be their therapist. I could be their brother, their sister, et cetera, that there are myriad human relationships that we participate in. The strangers in the supermarket are not merely tools or obstacles, depending on where they stand, but they're whole, complete individuals. Now, we all know that at some level. How often do we exercise that ability? I want to bring 5% more of that total human experience to the world. And I want to make money doing it. That's the only sustainable way that I could possibly execute a mission that ridiculous and grandiose.
We had a guy who was really in Exit, who was really uncomfortable with the financial ambition part of it, because he grew up with money. His family had money and they were miserable.
Right.
And he was like, I just don't want any piece of that. Like I want to, and he's like a very much a researcher, like a student. He's like, I just want to study this, and I want it to help people. But I don't want to be like a P.T. Barnum, like huckster. And I was like, first of all, temperamentally, don't worry about it. That's not, even if you wanted to, you wouldn't. And I said, well, let's talk about what's your real ambition? Ambition doesn't have to be about money. And he explained that he wanted his sort of framework and the system that he had developed to help people. And we said, well, could you do that if you were, an Amazon warehouse employee for 9 or 10 hours a day? And he's like, well, no, I wouldn't have time. And it's like, would the world be like worse off if that was your situation? Or would the world be better off if you could get paid and make a living with this and make it your life? And he was like, well, yeah, the world would obviously be a better place, and I would be much happier. And it was like, well, then there it is. That's the ambition. That's why it has to be tied to money. It's not because you need to have a yacht or make $1 bazillion. It's like, you got to eat. And what's great about that level of ambition is it's super, like, the customer can meet you there. Like, if what you need from the customer is to make you a bazillionaire, big ask, you got to provide a lot of value, or you got to provide a little value to a ton of people. But if what you want is to eat and pay your rent and have like a lifestyle business that covers the basics, you can find people who will meet you there and who will take care of that for you 100%. Particularly in this group, there's people who want to do that for you.
The money is to magnetize you to your calling, right? It's to make you that you cannot be torn away from this thing that you need to be doing. And that may need to be a very strong magnet in some cases, that you have all these competing interests, that people that are saying, oh, come over here and do this and do that. You may have to raise your rates so that the magnetization is powerful enough that you stay tethered to the thing that you most need to be tied to. And I think to the extent that people have been encouraged to read this book, oversubscribed, and I'm just starting to make my way through it, but it was by one of our YouTube creators in the group. And essentially it's this idea that you have, you put your work out there for the world to see, and that you have people that line up and kind of bid for your services. And I think what I'm starting to notice is that there's just something about, you need to have an excitement around this calling you have. It can't be just an altruistic endeavor. There has to be some self-interested reasons in there. All the things that make magnetism happen and make magic work. I think you need to deploy all those things to keep you in the right pursuit.
Yeah, for some people, it is the money is a huge draw, and for others, it's literally just about getting money out of the way.
Right. And having money gives you the freedom and the options to pursue some of these things. Because we do have some members that are tied to their day jobs and they can't leave, and they have to use the moonlight hours of each night to work on their projects. And so it's important for people to get that financial independence, if only just so that they can devote the energy that it deserves to actually pursue their passion. Yeah. And maybe that's a topic that we could cover next week of how do you get from the idea to the side hustle? How do you get from the side hustle to actually paying your bills? Because I think that's a huge, it feels like a huge gulf, and maybe it doesn't need to be. Well, we ran a little bit longer, but we went in really interesting directions, so I wanted to let it ride. But thank you guys for your comments. This was really, really good. Yeah, we'll wrap it there, and we'll see you guys next week. Thanks.